to Arsenal News TV, and today we're going to look at how Arsenal could line up versus Newcastle United, and we're going to go straight into the formation, where Mikel may refer back to the 3-4-3 formation, or he may stick to the 4-2-3-1 formation. So Mikel may go with either a 4-2-3-1 or a 3-4-3 formation, but with Newcastle being a very defensive side and maybe playing 5 or 6 at the back, I think Mikel will go with a strong lineup and probably go with a 4-2-3-1. And given the fact that Mikel has been using this formation on a consistent basis, even though in the game versus Villarreal he kind of adapted the formation by playing a false 9, which didn't work at all. So hopefully Mikel will go with the 4-2-3-1 formation with hopefully an out-and-out striker, but he may refer to a 3-4-3 formation given the fact that Granit Xhaka at left back hasn't been working as well, and he may go with a left wing back in the form of maybe Bukayo Saka, or maybe a Kieran Tierney if he returns back to form and returns back to games, which he has hugely been missed as well. So in terms of that 4-2-3-1 formation, I think Mikel may change it back to a 3-4-3 formation, but given the fact that Newcastle is very defensive, if you switch the way Steve Bruce lines up Newcastle, they have 5, sometimes 6 at the back, and that's something that he's been able to do given the fact that there's no fans, or normally the fans will be fully against Steve Bruce's formation and this 5 at the back, 6 at the back formation. But in terms of the goalkeeper, who is Mikel going to go with? I think Bernd Leno saved us in the game versus Villarreal. If he didn't make that save from the shot from Gerard Moreno, we would have probably been conceded 3 and probably would have been out of the tie completely. But since he made that decent save, and he pretty much couldn't do anything about the first 2 goals because it was very difficult for him to save those. But if he could save that as well, that would have been something very well, but he did make important saves in the match, and I thought he played really well, and it was a good recovery after a horrendous mistake in the game versus Everton. But I think Mikel may go with Matt Ryan, because given the fact that everyone knows that this game is not as important as the game versus Villarreal, so he might go with his first choice goalkeeper just to have confidence in Bernd Leno, but he probably will go with Matt Ryan, as he said time and time again that this guy has been training as a beast, and he has been working absolutely hard for the Gunners, and he is an Arsenal fan himself, and he is someone that loves this club and will die for this club and will do anything he can in his abilities to do for this club. So I wouldn't mind going with Matt Ryan given the fact that he's our second choice goalkeeper, and we will have to go with our strongest lineup in the game versus Villarreal, and this is just like a training match, a pre-match, I don't know what you want to call it. It's just a test for the game versus Villarreal, because for me the league is pretty much done. We have to put all our eggs in the basket for the Europa League to get back into European football and maybe back into the Champions League. But first of all, we have to get past the game versus Villarreal and get a good comeback and score. You can win the game 1-0 and we'll be going through. So we have to try and get through this game, and I don't know how Mikel is going to line it up, and hopefully he changes the formation. But hopefully with the way he lines up against Newcastle, he probably will be able to test some new things, try new things out, as we pretty much know that we're going to be mid-table in the league, but everyone will forget where we finish in the league if we win the Europa League trophy and go into the Champions League. And for me, even though we might not be the best team in the Champions League, we might be getting back at 5-0 or 6-0, but now Stan Kroenke and Josh Kroenke don't have the excuses that we don't have the funds, we're not in the best of the leagues, and now we have the transfer money, so we can hopefully have a massive overhaul and have a much better squad to what we have right now. And that's what I want to really see if we have the if we go past Villarreal, and probably we're going to be facing Manchester United if we make it to the Europa League final, because they pretty much obliterated their opponent in the form of Roma. So in the goalkeeper position, I'm going to go with Matt Ryan because he's still a very good goalkeeper, but would he be able to contend with Bernd Leno and do what Emiliano Martinez did to Bernd Leno last season? He could do that if he has the talents and if he's able to have a good run of performances like he did in that pre-assist versus Fulham. So hopefully he will be able to get a clean sheet versus Newcastle United, because they're a very defensive side. So now we're going to move into the right back position, and this is where Mikel pretty much has 3 right backs to choose from. For me, these 3 right backs are pretty much as good as each other. Maybe Callum Chambers is a little bit better, but he was not as brilliant as he was in the game versus Villarreal. He's good defensively and he's good offensively, but in the game versus Villarreal, I didn't see that same desire and passion. It was there, but you couldn't see it in the performance like it did in the game versus West Ham, which I thought it was a standout performance for his whole season. So hopefully he's someone that's ready to pounce on this opportunity to be the main right back at the moment until the end of the season, and hopefully get into Mikel Arteta's thinking as the main right choice centre back in until the end of the season, because I really want to see a huge, massive overhaul in the summer, and I just want to get into back into the Champions League just for the money, so that we can get back into get back and have a massive overhaul in the squad. And that's what I want to see. And with the 3 right backs, maybe Callum Chambers, like with Bernd Leno, he'll probably be getting a rest. So probably it's either Cedric Soares or Hector Bellerin. And if you guys haven't checked the video out, them two are having a race in the Arsenal training video. If you go and check that one out, I'll leave a link somewhere in the description or somewhere in the cards you can click, where you can click the I button. And they were having a race with each other, Cedric Soares and Hector Bellerin, and that was one of the things spotted, and there was other players doing that as well. But in terms of Hector Bellerin and Cedric Soares, they're both fighting for a spot as well. They might be racing each other, but they're racing each other for a spot as well, in my opinion. But I think Mikel Arteta, the problem I have with him is the fact that his guy is so biased. He's going to put his favourites in the team, and I think he's going to go with Hector Bellerin ahead of Cedric Soares, even though Cedric Soares has been much better than Hector Bellerin. But since we're looking at how Mikel Arteta is going to line up Arsenal, I think he's going to go with Hector Bellerin in that right back position. For me, the thing about Hector Bellerin, he has his moments where he can do a nice run and create something, but the thing is, he doesn't suit the player ahead of him. If you have the likes of maybe Nicolas Pepe, he likes the right back to overlap. This guy normally does the opposite, and he always does underlapping runs. And his worst attribute, in my opinion, his biggest weakness is his positioning. He's always out of position. Every time I look at Hector Bellerin, I don't see him in the right back position. He's sometimes playing in the middle, he's playing in the right centre mid, he's playing somewhere in some different position to what he's been asked to. That's a big concern I have about Hector Bellerin. Now we're going to move into the right centre back position, and this is where Mikel Arteta has the opportunity to bring back a player that has returned from injury, and that is David Luiz. For me, I will go with David Luiz this game. Rob Holding, even though he looked decent in the game versus Villarreal, but there was not that much to his game that impressed me. He was the captain of the game. He done everything he could to his abilities, but we need much better right centre backs, in my opinion. And it looks like the Gunners will be very well if they bring back William Saliba, because I think he's a huge miss for the Gunners, even though he's very young. Partnering him alongside Pablo Mari is something I would love to see, but we have to see what Mikel Arteta has in his brain and what he's thinking of. Would even Mikel Arteta be here at the end of the season? We will have to wait and see. There's lots of questions to be asked, there's lots of questions to be answered, but only thing I can tell you is the fact that time will tell. So in terms of the right centre back position, I think Mikel Arteta is going to go with David Luiz. He might give David Luiz the opportunity. If he impresses, he'll probably start versus Villarreal. But if he doesn't get to standard and he makes a mistake like his old usual performances, and this is pretty much David Luiz's opportunity to play and maybe have a contract extension at the Gunners. But it looks like Mikel Arteta is very keen on making sure that they don't spend so much on David Luiz's contract, and they're looking for something like half of his wages to what he's currently being paid right now. And I think that would be a good bit of business by the Gunners if they can get him for one more season. He's someone that has the experience. He's done it at the big competitions, and he might be able to impress Mikel Arteta in this game. And we have to see what. To me, I think it all depends on what David Luiz's contract situation is at the end of the season. Is he going to get an extension, or is he going to be sold by the Gunners? Well, he's probably going to leave the Gunners. So we have to wait and see what happens. But since we have him until the end of the season, play him in some games. And the reason why I'm playing him, because for the left centre-back position, I think there's one man we're going to go with, and that's Gabriel Magalhaes. Even though Pablo Mari was a bit shaky in the game versus Villarreal, I think that was his worst performance in an Arsenal shirt till this date. He looked a bit rusty. I don't know what was wrong with him. I think the emotions got to him. I think the way Arsenal started the game got to his mindset. I don't know, but he's a very calm and composed player. But with the left centre-back position, I think they like to play with each other. I think Mikel Arteta has two centre-back pairings in the form of Pablo Mari and Rob Holding, and Gabriel Magalhaes and David Luiz. And I think Gabriel Magalhaes and David Luiz work well together. They both speak the language together. They both speak Portuguese. So they both know each other very well, and they can both listen to each other's commands and directions. And I think Gabriel Magalhaes, as we knew from our time from Lille, when he was playing for Lille, many people that watch French football on a daily basis said that if the Gunners are going to sign Gabriel Magalhaes, one thing that we have to realize is that he needs to be playing alongside a very experienced defender. And when it comes to experience, you don't have anyone more experienced than David Luiz. So I think Mikel Arteta is going to go with Gabriel Magalhaes and David Luiz in the left centre-back and right centre-back positions. Now, we're going to move into the left-back position. And this is where the Gunners have a huge problem, because Kieran Tierney, even though Mikel Arteta said in his latest press conference before the game versus Villarreal that he was in contention, he didn't make the reserves bench or the substitutes bench. So he did train with the Arsenal squad, he did travel with the Arsenal squad, but he didn't play in the Arsenal squad and he wasn't even featured at all. He wasn't even in the substitutes bench. So is Kieran Tierney back to training? Is he going to be available for the game versus Thursday? I'd rather him play for the game versus Thursday than risk him on the game versus Newcastle. We know how physical the players are in Newcastle. You got the likes of St. Maximum and other players that are very physical. We got our own player in the form of Joe Willock, who has been in sensational form. A funny statistic is when we get to that position, we're going to talk about something regarding Joe Willock and our midfielder choices. And in terms of the left-back position, I think Mikel Arteta might refer back to Cedric Soares in that position, given the fact that if he's going to go with Hector Bellerin in the right-back position, and Callum Chambers is probably going to be the main starting right back in the game versus Villarreal, because that's the more important game. That's where the money is, that's where the prize is, and that's where the trophy is. This game is just like an ordinary game. You can say that we know you have them games in pre-season. It's like those sorts of games right now. The Premier League, because the season's done for me, the Premier League's done for me, and we pretty much have everything relying upon our Europa League campaign. 2 more games to get a Europa League trophy and back into Champions League, and some money for some transfer funds. And that's what I want to see at this club. I don't mind where we finish the league if we have been inconsistent. But if we get into the Champions League and we see a lot of changes, then I will trust this process that everyone is talking about under Mikel Arteta. I know the squad is not good enough in terms of my opinion. If you look at our squad and you look at with Chelsea, and everyone has been comparing us to Chelsea. Look, they had Frank Lampard, we had Mikel Arteta. They both were literally 8th and 9th positions. Look at where Chelsea is now, they're in the top 4 position. And you look at where Arsenal is right now, and they're still literally mid-table in 10th position currently. So in terms of Chelsea and Arsenal, you're probably wondering, why don't we change our manager? Why don't we have a new manager into the squad? And for me, I think Mikel Arteta might not have the best performance out of every single player there, but he's done a good thing in terms of our club. He's changed the way we play. We were very poor when it comes to conceding goals, but even though we have been conceding a lot of goals recently, like 2 goals like a game versus Villarreal, but there's more of a structure in the team. I can see the players playing for each other, they're playing for Mikel Arteta, and that's something I've seen adapt to his game. I think the confidence all came from the game in the FA Cup final where they won the trophy. That's what kept this guy in the competition. We know how good he is when it comes to cup competitions, so he might be the reason. He might be able to get the trophy versus Manchester United and hopefully beat Villarreal in the game, the second leg of the semi-final at the Emirates Stadium. So we know this guy has some talents, but can he do it with the players? The one biggest weakness in terms of Mikel Arteta is his weakness, and we saw when Unai Emery, when this guy was winning 2-0 versus Arsenal. If you guys watched when Unai Emery was the manager of the Gunners, every manager obviously has a weakness. And when it comes to Unai Emery, his weakness was the fact that he's very pragmatic. When he makes a decision, when they're winning 2-0, he was thinking straight away, okay, we're winning 2-0, we have a good lead, we can go into the Emirates and have at least play defensively. What he did straight away in the first half, he took off a striker and put on a holding midfielder. So that's the problem with Unai Emery. He's very pragmatic. But when it comes to Mikel Arteta, the biggest weakness I see in Mikel Arteta is his bias. Is his fact that he puts players that he finds them as favourites, and he plays his favourites ahead of the players that actually perform well. Gabriel Martinelli being an excellent option, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang being another option. He was poor. He was poor when we had that poor run of form, but Mikel Arteta didn't drop him. And that's something that I see in Mikel Arteta. He has favourites, and hopefully now that he's realised that he shouldn't be able to rely on his favourites and rely on his bias and go with players that are actually performing well. We see that with the likes of Callum Chambers, given the opportunity, even though Hector Bellerin was probably his son back in the days when both of them were playing together, like he was actually like an other uncle to Hector Bellerin. You can clearly see that Mikel Arteta has some favourites like Hector Bellerin and certain players like Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, but he also doesn't give the opportunity to players such as nicolas Pepe, who have been performing really well. He has one bad game and he's dropped for the next game. But you can clearly see that Mikel Arteta is learning from his mistakes, and he's a new manager. He's coming into the league. He's learning with a big club like Arsenal. And to me, you would probably say, why are you doing a experiment with a big club like Arsenal? But that's what the situation we're in. We're in this situation where we are rotten from top to bottom. And if the top is not out, in my opinion, if we can get these cronkies out of the club and get someone like a Daniel Ek or someone like a Aliko Dangote to the squad, to the ownership, I think we will have a huge improvement. But it's very difficult to get rid of these owners. We have to trust by their word. Unless the fans can do something, we have to do something massive to get rid of these owners. We remember Liverpool did something with their owners and got rid of them. We have to do something of that level to try and get rid of these owners. And we can clearly see that these fans are all united when it comes to getting rid of these owners, and that's something I see as a huge positive. But when it comes to Mikel Arteta, the biggest weakness is his bias, and hopefully in this game versus Newcastle, he tries his options. If he thinks the player has been playing well, give him the opportunity. If he impresses, everyone's going to be praising him. All the fans are going to be praising him. And Mikel Arteta will probably think to himself, he's played well, let's take him in the game versus Villarreal. So this is pretty much an audition for the players in the game versus Newcastle to say, if you perform well, you're going to play in the game versus Villarreal, because the best players are going to play in the game versus Villarreal, because this is probably the biggest game of our season right now. And I've said it to every single Europa League knockout match, but this is a really big one in my opinion. So now we're going to move into the left back position, and even though Kieran Tierney may be back into training, he might be into contention of the squad, giving like 10-20 minutes at the end of the game, because let's not risk the guy. He might have the confidence and passion to play, but if he comes in and someone like Saint-Maximin just barges him and he twists his ankle again, there's a huge risk for the Gunners, and he may not also be ready match fit for the game versus Newcastle. So I think he's going to go with Cedric Soares in that left back position, given the fact that it hasn't been working for Granit Xhaka in that left back position, and I'm trying to find Cedric Soares, but I'm struggling to find him. So let me see if I can find him for a second. Cedric Soares, but he's not in this in the defense in that Cedric Soares position. So if I can type in so I can't find Cedric Soares in that position. So I'm going to type in S and see what no. So you can't see Cedric Soares. I don't know why Cedric Soares hasn't been put into this list. That's a big shame in my opinion, because I think Cedric Soares is someone that can play in that position, someone that can play in that left-back position. But as I was saying, I would love to see Mikel Arteta try his options, and I think he's going to go with Cedric Soares in that position. I'm going to label him as that, but I can't find Cedric Soares, unfortunately. Give me a few seconds. So unfortunately, guys, I couldn't find Cedric Soares in that left-back position, but hopefully you guys know that in that position, I'm going to go with Cedric Soares. And unfortunately, on this website, in the squad selector, there is no Cedric Soares in the Arsenal list. But moving on to the right centre mid position, this is where I was talking about. I was going to say something regarding Joe Willock and our current midfield. If you look at the statistics, Joe Willock has scored more goals himself than our whole midfield combined. So that is a terrifying stats as an Arsenal fan. We got rid of a player in the form of Joe Willock to a team like Newcastle United. We got rid of a player like Maitland-Niles to a team like West Brom. So we can clearly see how poor our midfield is. But I'm going to go with the right centre mid position, and hopefully Mikel Arteta realises that these two players are two players that are going to play this game, and hopefully these are their last games at this club, in my opinion. So in the right centre mid position, we're going to go with Mohamed Elneny. And hopefully Elneny is in this squad, and hopefully he is. Yes, he is. So we're going to go with Mohamed Elneny in the right centre mid position. It looks like his contract runs at the end of this season or the end of next season. And I think it does run at the end of this season. So we have to get rid of this guy. For me, try and sell him, you might get £10 million maybe, or £5 million for Elneny. But I think I don't want to see him in the squad. I rate the guy, he's got a good personality. I love the guy, but to be honest, he's never going to be a perfect regular at the Gunners, and he's never going to be playing in that midfield for a long time, and he's never going to be our starting midfielder, unless he turns into the next, I don't know who he wants to be. He turns into an Iniesta or something like that, but that's never going to happen. But thinking Mohamed Elneny, even though the guy is someone I love, I don't want to see him next season. We need a massive overhaul in midfield, and this is one player that is going to play hopefully the last game in the game versus Newcastle United, and pretty much the league games to come until the end of the season. So in the left centre mid position, this is another player like Mohamed Elneny that I want to see leave the club, and that is Dani Ceballos. And for me, this is what infuriated me the most about Dani Ceballos, is the fact that he stated in the match, just before the match versus Villarreal, in a post-match interview, in an interview where he talked about the fact that he doesn't see his future at the Premier League, he sees his future in La Liga, and he sees himself going back to Real Madrid. And the funny thing is, he played versus Villarreal, who I expected big things from Dani Ceballos. Villarreal, by the way, are in the La Liga, if you guys know. That's the league that he wants to be against, and he's going to play teams such as Villarreal. And he was awful versus Villarreal. Awful wasn't the word to describe him, but he was horrendous when it comes to his performance. A red card, sloppy mistake. He didn't look himself at all. There was no flair to his game. There was no skills. There was nothing about his game that impressed me. And he just looked like very poor in that midfield. And really, I want to see him leaving at the end of the season. I know Mikel has his favourites, as I kept on mentioning, and Dani Ceballos seems to be one of his favourites. But at the end of the season, I want him to be sold. To let him to return back to Real Madrid and let him leave the Gunners for good. And bring in youngsters like Willock and Maitland-Niles as maybe our reserve centre mids. Those players come on instead of like a Thomas Partey, and someone like Eva Bissouma, if you can bring him to the Gunners. If you're bringing in these two players, if you want two midfielders to replace them, I want to see the likes of Willock and Maitland-Niles replace them, not the likes of Elneny and Dani Ceballos, who I think they're way below the standards which all Arsenal fans require from this Arsenal team. And with youngsters like Joe Willock and Maitland-Niles, they got a lot to learn from the best players. They can learn from a player like Thomas Partey if he's on his day, and a player like Eva Bissouma maybe. These players could teach them how to be a good midfielder, and they are players that know Arsenal through and through, and they're going to put 110% in training, they're going to put 110% in matches, and they're going to try and do everything to learn from these top midfielders. Unlike the likes of Elneny, he's going past his prime at this moment. Dani Ceballos, his future isn't with the Gunners. He knows that in the back of his mind. He's not going to put 110% every single game, so he needs to go with the likes of Thomas Partey and go with midfielders like Joe Willock. He has more goals than our current midfield right now. So now we're going to move into the right winger role. And this is where, as I mentioned before, Mikel has the opportunity to try new players out, try players that have been underperforming, try players that he wants to see. Do you think they deserve a new contract? Do you think they deserve a stay at this Gunners? Or should we sell these players? We can already see some players already in this team. We've got the likes of Matt Ryan. We still don't know if we're going to give him a new deal or should we sell him. But even though he has impressed in certain games, I won't mind giving him a new deal. But as a second choice goalkeeper to Bert Leno, but our top choice goalkeeper, his future looks uncertain as well. You got Hector Bellerin, who looks likely to leave. It looks like £22 million is something that the three they're discussing, and that's what they want for Hector Bellerin. PSG and Barcelona are both linked with Hector Bellerin, and they will probably want to sign someone like a Hector Bellerin, who's only 25 at the moment and has a few years ahead of him. And would he be able to do it in a team like PSG and a team like Barcelona? We don't know. Only time will tell. Then we got the players like David Luiz, who are going into the final year of their contract. Would they going to remain in this team? I don't know. It's their decision. I think this is the opportunity to give Mikel Arteta. If they play well as a team today, they'll probably be given new contracts or given a longer stay at the Gunners. David Luiz is one person, Mohamed Elneny another person. Ceballos may be a permanent deal for the Gunners is another option, which I don't really want to see. And now moving into the right winger role, we got Willian. And Willian is someone that, apart from that run of good form he had where he had like 2-3 assists like every single game, then after that he just went downhill. And as Chelsea fans tell time and time again, you're getting Willian, he will impress you for like 2-3 games and you think, oh my god, he's going to be really good, he's going to be playing very well, and then he gives you back the old Willian again. And that's what the players told me again. This guy's another player that's so inconsistent with his performances. But I think we need to give the likes of Bukayo Saka a rest. This guy's been carrying Arsenal fully. Mikel Arteta knows it. Arsenal knows it. Everyone knows that if you're related to Arsenal, if you love Arsenal Football Club, you know this guy, Bukayo Saka, has been carrying this team on his back. And now we're going to move into the number 10 role. And this is a player that I want to see given the opportunity. I'll rather go with Martin Odegaard, but since we're looking at how Mikel Arteta will line up Arsenal, I think he's going to go with Willian in that right winger role, and in the number 10 role, he's going to go with Emil Smith Rowe, and I think he prefers Martin Odegaard ahead of Emil Smith-Rowe, even though this guy has done so much to this club. He is the reason why Arsenal are not fighting for a relegation battle right now. He came in, he made a difference versus Chelsea, and he changed the dynamic and the fluidity and the intensity from the players. That's something I like about Emil Smith-Rowe. Time will tell if he will become to the next level. He's committed to Arsenal. He's got a new contract probably lined up by Mikel Arteta soon, and hopefully Mikel Arteta will play him in this game, given the fact that he needs the match fitness to have that sharpness in this game, get confidence if he gets 1 or 2 goals. And I've seen the stat where when Emil Smith-Rowe starts, there's a high possibility that the Gunners win, and I'll rather go with Martin Odegaard since he was awful in the game versus Villarreal. So I'd rather go with Emil Smith-Rowe. And given the fact that Emil Smith-Rowe is someone that can play in that number 10 role, that's his preferred position, why not go with Emil Smith-Rowe? And I think Mikel Arteta will probably go with Emil Smith-Rowe, but I'd rather see Martin Odegaard, given the confidence, since he was awful in the game versus Villarreal. I'd rather have Smith-Rowe having a rest, because this guy's been playing a lot of games for the Gunners. There's too much reliance on the guy alongside bukayo Saka, so he might go with Martin Odegaard, but he might go with Emil Smith-Rowe. So I think he's going to go with Emil Smith-Rowe, given the fact that he prefers Martin Odegaard over Smith-Rowe, and he will probably want to save him for the big games. And in terms of my opinion, I would rather go with Odegaard instead of Smith-Rowe. Smith-Rowe is for the future of Arsenal. Smith-Rowe is Arsenal through and through, so I'll give Smith-Rowe a rest in the game versus Villarreal. Now, we're going to move into the left winger role, and this is someone time and time again, the Gunners players, everyone knows, the players that play alongside him, the fans know alongside him, the Arsenal pundits, everyone knows that this guy deserves more opportunities apart from Mikel Arteta. And his name is Gabriel Martinelli. And Gabriel Martinelli is someone that has been done harshly. We're talking about this favourites with Mikel Arteta's biggest weakness. When I talk about Unai Emery, I think of pragmatism. When I think of Mikel Arteta, I think of bias. And bias is something that has been ruining matches, something that he has to get rid of his game. It's a personal thing, it's a human thing, it's a human characteristic. We can't all be perfect, no human is perfect, but Mikel Arteta needs to get rid of this bias out of his game. We're telling him time and time again. And Gabriel Martinelli will probably be starting in the game versus Newcastle. He'll be getting some minutes. But the thing is, he has players such as nicolas, pepe, who have been playing very well in that left winger role ahead of him at the moment. So if he impresses, if he has a good game in that left winger role, he might be starting in the game versus Villarreal. But I think this is an opportunity for Martinelli to be given minutes, because I think Mikel Arteta is going to go with his strongest players, and people like aubameyang and lacazette will probably feature heavily ahead of Gabriel Martinelli. And Martinelli will probably make the bench, in my opinion, the minimum, and he'll probably get 5-10 minutes at the end of the game, in my opinion. So he'll probably have to play impressively in this game versus Newcastle, and he's going to be playing in that left winger role, and alongside behind him with Cedric Soares, as you can't see right now because his picture is not there. There's no tag saying for Cedric Soares. So with Gabriel Martinelli and Cedric Soares both having a good relationship. They both speak Portuguese. They know how to play for each other, and they both like each other so much, and they have a good relationship. So you can see that these two players will have a good relationship on the pitch as well, and they will have a good understanding of when to do underlapping runs, when to do overlapping runs, and how to get past that right back of the Newcastle, or the back two, right centre back and right back of Newcastle, in my opinion. Now we're going to move into the striker role, and I think this person deserves the opportunity to play now. He came back from malaria. He's someone that needs to get some confidence from somewhere. He had that good opportunity versus Villarreal, but one thing I realised from the game was that these players are slipping so much, and even Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang in the final 2 minutes of the game, he slipped when he had the good opportunity. And the person that looks at the boots of Arsenal needs to fix something out, because we don't want these players slipping and messing up big opportunities. Like we all famously remember when Steven Gerrard made that slip and ruined Liverpool's title challenge and the opportunity to get their first title back in the days. So we don't want that to ruin our first opportunity to get a European trophy. And hopefully Mikel Arteta and his squad of managers and the person that looks at the boots, particularly looks at Aubameyang's boots and certain other players, because I don't want to see these players slipping. And in terms of Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, he's someone that needs to get a goal or two to probably start in the game versus Villarreal if Lacazette is not fit. And I think Mikel Arteta is going to go with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang in that striker role. And now I'm going to tell you my predicted lineup and how I would like to set up Arsenal and what I would change from Mikel Arteta. For me, I think it's a decent lineup, because we all know this is just a pre-match game. This is just a training ground routine for the Gunners. Some players to have an audition to see if they play well. They'll play in the game versus Villarreal. And in terms of the players over here, I like the goalkeeper in former Matt Ryan. I like the centre-backs in Magalhaes and David Luiz. The centre-mids, Ceballos and Elneny, given the fact that hopefully Saka and Partey partner each other in the game versus Villarreal, because I don't want to see Danny Ceballos partner. He's been given too many opportunities and he has failed to impress. In the left-back role, I don't mind to see Cedric Soares. I'd rather see Cedric Soares in that right-back role, but given the fact that Kevin Tierney needs the rest, he needs the opportunity to be proper ready in the game versus Thursday, I'll go with Cedric Soares in the left back position. As you guys know, I tell you time and time again, the picture is not there for Cedric Soares, so I have nothing there to see, and that's something this website has to fix in their website, in my opinion. And now, Hector Bellerin in the right back position, that's fine. These are pretty much all the second choice centre mids, Danny Ceballos and Elneny. In terms of the right wing, yes, I don't mind to see Willian. I'd rather see a Reece Nelson instead, but Willian is someone that has to have a run of games as well. Maybe he could be sold at the end of the season. We have to wait and see. Smith Rowe in that number 10 role, that's my only concern. I'd rather go with Martin Odegaard instead of Smith Rowe. Martinelli, yes, he deserves the minutes, and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, yes. So I do like this lineup. I do like the way Mikel Arteta has lined up the Gunners in the game versus Newcastle. As I mentioned, this is going to be an audition versus Newcastle United. Some of these players might be given the opportunity to play versus Villarreal, but they're all pretty much second choice in their positions. And for me, the only player that I'll probably get rid of is putting in Martin Odegaard instead of Emil Smith Rowe in that number 10 role. But other than that, guys, remain blessed. Stay tuned for the next video, and peace.